What's up, ghosts? Jake here, and I just want to welcome you to the Moonlit Ghost 2021. If you're new to the channel, this is where we share ghost stories, revel in the bizarre, investigate claims of the paranormal, and overall, just try to get to the truth of the unknown. If you are into any of that, please like this video right now. That will force the YouTube algorithm to get this video out to many others who are, like you and me, interested in understanding this mysterious world. Also, make sure to subscribe and watch this video all the way to the end for my official report on one of the most contested Bigfoot videos there is, the Marble Mountain Bigfoot video. Before we get into it, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest patron, Christian Owens, who is the first Pulterguist out of 100 spots available. As such, got access to this video and will get access to all of my future deep dive analysis videos 3 days early. There are 99 spots left, so check out my Patreon and get in the credits of my videos while you still can. This is 3 Sasquatch sightings that may not be what they appear. Play that intro. Thompson, an intrepid explorer, one of the greatest of all time, and it's a shame you may not have heard of him. I hadn't, but the famed Lewis and Clark, when they made their expedition across the western United States, they were using one of Thompson's maps, who had years prior explored the area and mapped it out. He also kept detailed journals about his travels, which is where we get today's first story. Thompson was near Jasper, Alberta, following the Athabasca River, and just prior to the mouth of the Whirlpool River, he had an experience that would stay with him for the rest of his life. On January 7th, 1811, he recorded in his journal the following. Continuing our journey in the afternoon, we came on the track of a large animal. The snow about 6 inches deep on the ice. I measured it. 4 large toes, each of 4 inches in length, to each a short claw. The ball of the foot sunk 3 inches lower than the toes. The hinder part of the foot did not mark well. The length 14 inches by 8 inches in breadth, walking from north to south, and having passed about 6 hours. We were in no humor to follow him. The men and Indians would have it be the track of a young mammoth, and I held it to be the track of a large old grizzled bear. Yet the shortness of the nails, the ball of the foot, and its great size was not that of a bear, otherwise that of a very large old bear, his claws worn away. This the Indians would not allow. Although this was just an ephemeral instance in Thompson's life, it stayed with him. He recalled the event in journals multiple times, once even 40 years later, where he wrote, "Report of old times had made the head branches of this river and the mountains in the vicinity the abode of one or more very large animals, to which I never appeared to give credence. For these reports appeared to arise from the fondness for the marvelous so common to mankind. But the sight of the track of that large beast staggered me, and I often thought of it, yet never could bring myself to believe such an animal existed, but thought it might be the track of some monster bear." Though he tries to convince himself that it was a bear, he expresses doubt about it. And those doubts are striking, since Thompson, at the time, he was an experienced explorer and tracker for nearly 30 years. Although Thompson never said anything about a Sasquatch, this account has caused some to argue that what Thompson saw that day was indeed the track of a Bigfoot. Sasquatch Alberta makes a couple interesting points about Thompson's story, insinuating that the tracks could be a Bigfoot. But I have a couple interesting rebuttals, and I will get to them, but since it was difficult to really understand what this creature may have been, based solely off of a journal entry, I enlisted the help of Chris Wilburn, an experienced trapper who has a great outdoors channel and also has a great channel dedicated to sharing stories about Sasquatch. Go check him out. He's shouted me out a few times. I highly recommend his channel. And I also spoke at length with Michael Rudder, a wildlife photographer who has dedicated his life to studying and photographing bears. You can check some of his work out on Instagram here. Both of these men are extremely familiar with bears and what their tracks look like. And in this story, at this point, we have 3 possibilities. What Thompson saw that day was either the track of a bear, a Sasquatch, or, as the natives incredibly argued, a mammoth. Thompson describes 4 large toes, each 4 inches in length. You might be thinking, don't bears have 5 toes? Yes, they do. However, in mud and snow, they often might not register as part of the track. In fact, this is common in bear tracks that you don't necessarily always see the 5th toe. This is evident in this photo Chris sent me of a bear track in snow. Note 4 large toes. and the length of 4 inches. This is consistent with a large bear, but also this, the toe length, plays into a larger point I'll make later on, so just keep this point in mind for the time being. A follow-up point that is worth noting is that plaster casts of alleged Bigfoot tracks generally always show 5 toes. Then Thompson said, to each a short claw. This is one of the issues that caused Thompson to doubt whether or not it was a bear, stating the shortness of the nail was not that of a bear. Assuming this was a large brown bear, the claws would be several inches in length. And even when both Chris Wilburn and Michael Rutter independently assured me that there are various reasons why a bear track might not even register a claw accurately or even at all, depending on the nature of the snow, the wind, or the temperature, or length of time the track had been there, or even the gait of the bear itself, I lost sleep over this fact, because even though all of those reasons might be factors in determining whether or not you can see the impression of a claw in 6 inches of snow, you would think that Thompson, being an experienced outdoorsman, would know that. But this bothered him for 40 years. He thought about it a lot, and it just didn't sit right with him for some reason. And then he says, the ball of the foot sunk 3 inches lower than the toes. This also perplexed Thompson, but neither one of those things, the short claw or the ball of the foot, was what vexed him the most. And we will get to that thing shortly. The hinder part of the foot did not mark well. This point is extremely consistent with bear tracks, especially the front track, but this also gets us into some strange territory concerning not just things Thompson described, but what he didn't describe. A point brought up by Sasquatch Alberta to suggest that this track wasn't a bear, insinuating that it could have been a Sasquatch, points out the fact that the front paw and the hind paw of bears aren't identical. The front paw is much smaller than the hind paw, which begs the question, why didn't Thompson describe 2 sets of tracks? If it was a bear, there should have been 2 distinct sets of tracks, giving us the smoking gun that it was indeed a bear. And without it, all of these other points that I'm putting together to suggest that it is a bear seem to fall out of place. So what is the solution here? Is it a bipedal creature like Bigfoot with 1 set of tracks? Or is it, as the native suggested, a mammoth with 4 feet, all identical? One thing to note as well is that bears are what is called opportunistic, meaning they will take advantage of any possible thing they can in order to conserve energy. Often this means that they might step their hind paw in the same track made by their front paw as they walk to conserve energy. And if this were the case, to the untrained eye, it might appear that there was only 1 set of tracks, and this also often gives a false impression of track size. However, the primary issue with this is that Thompson did not have an untrained eye. I seriously consider this as a possibility though. It kind of worked. What if it was a smaller black bear? They would have shorter claws, and both the tracks being put in the same track would exaggerate the length of the track, giving an impression that there was only 1 set of tracks. I tossed and turned thinking about this, trying to understand what was going on, and it just didn't sit right. I've been reading more of Thompson's journals to get a better understanding of who he was, and I'm confident that he would have known that this wasn't the case. I can confidently say that whatever was making these tracks wasn't stepping into its own tracks and deceiving Thompson's description. But where does that leave us, and how then can it still be a bear? Well, what if it was a mammoth? The men and Indians would have it be a young mammoth. This is one of the most fascinating parts of the story, adding complexity and intrigue. So could it have been a mammoth? There are speculative reports from other early explorers, stories from natives, and other accounts that suggest mammoths could have still been around in the 1800s. These stories conflict with mainstream scientists' suggestions that the last known mammoth went extinct around 1650 BC. But I'm not making this video to argue one way or another about whether mammoths are still around. They very well could be. I don't know. My goal here is to understand what David Thompson's track was. And after my research, I can say with 100% certainty that what Thompson described is not the track of a mammoth. Just the description of itself tells us everything we need to know to eliminate the mammoth hypothesis. It simply doesn't look anything like a mammoth track, and we know what mammoths looked like, and subsequently we know what their tracks looked like, and it's just not feasible that Thompson's track was a mammoth. But why then did the natives suggest that's what it was? It seems really strange, and it's hard to wrap your mind around. Well, as I said, I spent time reading more of Thompson's journal, and coincidentally, just days prior to this happening, Thompson remarked about the natives' unflinching belief in the existence of the mammoth, Thompson said, "Strange to say, here is a strong belief that the haunt of the mammoth is about this defile. I questioned several. None could positively say they had seen him, but their belief I found firm and not to be shaken. I remarked to them that such an enormous, heavy animal must leave indelible marks of his feet and his feeding. This they all acknowledged, and that they had never seen any marks of him, and therefore could show me none. All I could say did not shake their belief in his existence." So you can just imagine this scenario. This foreigner, Thompson, doesn't believe mammoth exists and is trying to convince the natives of it, but despite the lack of evidence, they aren't having it. Stories, myths, legends are often a cultural glue that people feel a sense of pride in sharing with others, whether it's based in reality or not. These stories are often the only thing that remain from past generations, and we cherish them and potentially look for any reason to validate them. And then literally just days later, they happen upon the track of an indelible mark of a foot. Thompson's own words smacking him in the face right there in front of them. And although a complete description of this track doesn't look like a mammoth track, it was large enough and odd enough that the natives most certainly felt as though this might be their proof. And what better timing? These are the indelible marks that Thompson was asking for. The mammoth must be real. Keep in mind that none of them had seen a mammoth or a mammoth track, so they couldn't compare it to anything they knew. But they had two things going for them: a long-held belief that they took pride in, and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity presenting itself right in front of them to prove to the outsider that the mammoth was real. But with our current knowledge that mammoth tracks are very similar to elephant tracks, and that elephant tracks look absolutely nothing like what Thompson is describing, we know that that track is not that of a mammoth. So then it must be a Bigfoot, right? Well, not so fast. Then Thompson describes the length and width of the entire track. He says the length 14 inches by 8 inches in breadth. This fits the description of a large bear to a T. We know of bears that produce upwards of 16-inch tracks. They are out there. Admittedly, they are rare, but they are there. And even though Thompson had been an experienced outdoorsman for nearly 30 years at this point, he had never seen a bear that could produce a track of that size. And it very feasibly could be that he simply didn't believe that bears of that size could exist, which is the predominant reason he doubted it was a bear. Out of the three things, the size, the shortness of the nail, and the ball of the foot, the most striking to Thompson was the sheer size. And he even admitted that it could be a monster bear. If it was a bear of that size, it is extremely likely that the ball of the foot would naturally sink lower than he thought the typical for your average bear. It is completely reasonable to imagine that the bigger the bear, the greater the impression that the ball of the foot sinks further into the snow than the toes. And this would undoubtedly clear up Thompson's confusion about the ball of the foot sinking lower than the toes. So this leaves two final issues to address. Why was the claw described as short, and why weren't two sets of tracks described? Let me address the shortness of the claw first. Both Chris and Michael assured me that there are a variety of reasons why the claw might appear smaller than it actually was. But it wasn't until one of Michael Rudder's suggestions that I really was able to justify why it gave Thompson doubt. Michael suggested that it could be a possibility that mud, dirt, snow, or ice, or other debris could have been caked in and around the toes of the bear, exaggerating the size of the toe and subsequently lessening the perceived length of the claw. And I thought, okay, well, that might be. And I was just about to leave it at that. But then I started thinking, if what Michael was suggesting were true, then I thought you might be able to show that by comparing the toe to foot length ratio on an adult brown bear's hind paw with the dimensions that Thompson gives. And I did that, and a hypothesis fits. I'm admitting right up front that this is by no means an extensive study. I just found some images and did a quick toe to overall foot length ratio for adult brown bears. And for my quick look into this, the toe typically represents anything from 3/16 to 1/4 of the overall foot length, 3/16 and 7/32 representing smaller toes. And if we take the dimensions that Thompson gave us, 4 inches for the toes and 14 inches for the foot, we see that this gives us a perceptibly larger than average toe to foot ratio. But taking into consideration Michael's suggestion that debris could be exaggerating the size of the toe and just do this, we get an increased toe size that fits Thompson's descriptions along with a misrepresented impression of a smaller claw. And I don't know if this is exactly right, but it all fits the description. It all fits the description of a bear. And finally, the 6 inches of snow Thompson describes, it's significant and potentially solves the final problem of the mystery. Why didn't Thompson describe 2 sets of tracks if it was a bear? For many bears, 6 inches of snow might be enough to trigger them to step their hind paw into the track made by their front paw as they walk. But as we discussed earlier, I am sure this wasn't happening. That's because a bear big enough to make a 14-inch track in the snow would be large enough that a mere 6 inches wouldn't be a significant deterrent to prompt the bear to walk in that manner. The bear was making 2 sets of tracks because 6 inches of snow wasn't deep enough for a bear that size to walk in its own tracks. However, 6 inches of snow would potentially be deep enough to be able to make the front track and the back track more similar than dissimilar, since much more of the front paw would be impressing into the snow as it walked. Again, I don't know if that is exactly what happened, but what I can confidently say after researching this story and consulting 2 experts in the field is that what Thompson saw that day was in fact the track of a large bear and not a Sasquatch or a mammoth. Ken Kings Jr. Around July of 2020, Ken King posted this video to his YouTube channel. I know, crazy, right? He claims this is a genuine Sasquatch and that he nicknamed Junior. Shortly after he posted, I found the video and I was astounded, and I downloaded the video so I could analyze it in more detail. Then I commented on the video and said that this was incredible footage, but I followed that up by asking if it was possible that this was someone in a suit. He didn't respond to my question, and in fact, shortly thereafter, he took the video down. I followed up with him again on another one of his videos, but he never responded to my question. And so I found myself in this weird situation where I had this video of a supposed Bigfoot that was then suddenly nowhere online, and Ken King wouldn't follow up with me. So I threw it into Premiere and I found something very interesting. I found that the harder to make out clips, if you crank up the brightness and adjust the contrast, what becomes clearly visible is a white stripe around the neck of Junior, which is not there in this clip filmed separately of Junior. So Ken, I'm sorry, man, this is clearly a suit. I mean, the only alternative is that this is 2 separate Bigfoot and one of them has a white stripe around its neck. But that said, I also reached out to Matt Moneymaker, president of the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization and star of Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot. Surprisingly, he responded to me by saying, "Jacob, share the link with me so I can have it analyzed. I'm the president of the BFRO and can get input from the most experienced analysts of this type of footage. Thanks, Matt Moneymaker." And so I shared the video with him and expressed my concerns that it could be a suit. And he responded back and he said, "I agree with your conclusion. I think it's a costume, or more specifically, a costume sleeve. The white stripe collar appears to be the seam where the sleeve is attached to some other garment. I think it's fake, but I appreciate you sharing it. Matt, BFRO." So here's the deal. I've watched much of his channel, and I've personally analyzed the Junior video, and I've got Matt Moneymaker, someone who has dedicated his life to finding real evidence of Bigfoot, telling me that after he has analyzed it with his team, he thinks it's fake. And I can confidently say that Junior isn't real, unfortunately. I know that I'm going to get some hate over this because Ken has some loyal fans. In fact, they remind me of Maddie Ann's fan base. But unfortunately for Ken, he has more content that potentially shows further evidence of fraud than I had to work with Maddie Ann's channel. So what I'm saying is I don't want to, but if it comes to it, and if I need to, people don't think that this is enough evidence, I will Maddie Ann Ken King. Oh, I hate my life. I'm not trying to ruin anybody's career. I just want people to tell the truth because I want to know what's real. I'm done. I don't have a lot of time before Mr. There's a rational explanation for everything comes back. But if you take anything away from this video, just remember these 3 words. Involve, quaint, and onions. I'm telling you, that's the whole point of this video. Nothing else matters. Just remember those words. Involve, quaint, onions. And he wasn't gonna tell you. I gotta go. What are you doing? What are you doing? Get. Gosh, I cannot leave for a second. I don't know what he was saying, but do not listen to a word he said. Not one.
You said you would do UFOs. About. You said you would do more UFO videos.
Let's get on with it.
You said you would do 9 UFO videos.
No,
you did like
we are not
3.
doing UFOs. I'm not doing UFOs on this channel anymore.
Because you don't want to talk about the Turkey UFO incident. I built this channel.
No. All right, moving on. Where were we? Oh yeah, we're getting to the best part. This is the what are we even? Number 3, the Marble Mountain Bigfoot video. In July of 2000, 20 years ago, Jim Mills, security guard and leader of a campus life youth group, well on an outing in the Marble Mountains of Northern California, filmed what has become to be known as the Marble Mountain Bigfoot encounter. This is a Class A Bigfoot sighting as classified by the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and it's worth noting that where this was filmed is less than 40 miles from the famous Gimlin-Patterson footage of Bigfoot filmed back in the 60s. One of the reasons this video is remarkable is that it shows 3+ minutes of a supposed Bigfoot. The catch? It's nearly entirely a silhouette of a bipedal entity that many think is just a hiker. I mean, just look at it. At first glance, that's what it looks like. However, proponents of the Bigfoot theory claim it has many characteristics that simply aren't human. And they may have a point, but let's take a very close look at these claims and see if we can't discover what is actually going on here. Now, there are a lot of people saying a lot of things about this video, but the main claims arguing that it is a Bigfoot can be represented by the BFRO. But before I get into those claims, I want to quickly address Para-Breakdown's debunk of this video.
Is effortlessly gliding down the trail, taking massive 50 to 60 inch sure-footed strides. At one point, he turns into a skinny alien. Then he morphs into a dude wearing a jacket, shorts, and boots.
Wow. That's clearly a hiker. I guess he just debunked the Marble Mountain Bigfoot video. I don't even have to make the rest of this video. So I guess for the next 5 to 10 minutes, I will grace you with some Edgar Allan Poe. Mysterious star, thou wert my dream. All along a summer night, be now my theme. By this clear stream, O thee I will write. Meantime from afar, bathe me in light. And I will bathe you in light and debunk this debunker. Para-Breakdown, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Because this debunk is a sham. And I am extremely disappointed in you. Not because you attempted to debunk this video, that's fine, have your commentary, but you willingly misrepresented this video and you deceived your viewers. Because this is not the Marble Mountain Bigfoot video. This is the BFRO's recreation of the Marble Mountain Bigfoot video, but you attempted to use this as proof that the Marble Mountain Bigfoot video was showing a hiker, when that is not the case. Shame on you, Para-Breakdown. Alright, now that that's behind us, let's get to the real debunk here, because I'm gonna debunk it. I have watched this video probably 100 times, probably a dozen of those times, frame by frame, but it just wasn't quite what I'd hoped, even when I played with lighting and contrast and other effects to tease out detail. But I realized that I'm getting this from a YouTube video. So I tracked down the original DVD presented by the BFRO at the International Bigfoot Symposium back in 2003, which was not easy to find, by the way. I actually ordered it off of an old link on the BFRO's website, only to find out that they didn't sell the DVD anymore. After a series of email communications, I was directed to get in touch with Richard Knoll, whom I did, but it took a while to actually get the DVD sent out to me because they didn't make it anymore. But finally, thankfully, I got a hold of a copy of the original DVD. And it was a little better, but I was still hoping for more detail. So I used AI video upscaling software to help bring more detail out, and I wasn't disappointed. And now I'm just going to present some of the main points that are used to suggest that this is a Bigfoot, and I'm going to basically debunk them one at a time. Point 1, Jim Mills films this shelter, and he tries to make the argument that this is made by some creature, but this is, without a doubt, this is a bushcraft shelter. This is a tried and true method for creating a shelter in the wilderness with little to no tools. And this twine right here, I mean, this is a technique proven to be something humans do in order to create a shelter with little to no tools. This is a man-made bushcraft shelter. Could it be a Sasquatch? I don't know, but what I do know is that this is something humans not only can do, but actually do. And there is absolutely no reason to think that a human didn't make this. So this alone is not evidence for Bigfoot. Then he points up and there is this figure on the horizon walking down. And at one point he says the arms are way too long. This is a point that Jim Mills and the BFRL claim.
That is.
Doesn't look like a person.
It does not look like a person.
Doesn't look like a person. No.
Its arms are way too big. Look at how long the hands hang down to the.
How can you see from? They're down to his knees at least, aren't they?
We already discussed the subject's arms are long. Its hands reach down to about its knees. We can already tell that that's not true. We can show that right here. Look at this. This is the arm length. This is several different clips throughout the entire video where the arm length is clearly visible. This is about representation. So we have the bent knee right about here. So right about there in the head. Look at the arm length. These arms are not long. They are completely consistent with human proportions. And then same, this is from a different portion, a different section of the video. Notice the head here. I am going to address this in just a second. This is another claim that the head is coned like a Bigfoot. This is about right here. Yep, right there. This is the hand. The hand is extending out right there. This is regular arm length. This is just horribly clear that the arms do not extend to the knee. Here's the knee. Here are the bottom of the arms. Yeah, arm, body. Yeah, it's just the subject's gait shows a bent knee type of motion. However, this would also be the case with a human because of the downhill slope of the ridge. Almost the entire video is walking downhill. That is until the very end of the video when you see, I mean, look at that. This is not, you contrast this with Patty's gait, and you see very clearly that how it walks on more or less level ground, and it's just terribly human. See right there, just a slight knee bend, just barely bending. And then in this instance, I mean, I'm not addressing the feet at the moment, but look at that. I mean, that is, if that isn't a boot or some sort of foot gear, same over here, I don't know what is. I mean, that is, look at that. But not even speaking of the shoe, total extension, legs are straight, there's a shoe there, and then you even see the heel goes down, and then the toe goes down, and it rolls forward. It's just, this is just a human stride. This is not a Bigfoot stride. I mean, that's not a bent knee gait. The bent knee gait is just because he's walking downhill most of the video, but this is clearly, he's walking, you see the heel go down, and then the toe. It rolls along the foot. It doesn't stomp like a Bigfoot does. You can see no facial features, although you can see that the head is pointed on top. So supposedly they have kind of a domed head. And it does, like throughout the video, it looks like his head is kind of coned. And that's an argument made to say that this is Sasquatch. I have two specific points to show you why this is not true. First point is that I can show you that this figure is wearing some sort of headgear, and the second point is the coned head is an illusion from the dark aura surrounding the figure. If you just watch this, you might think it does have a coned head. Look at that. Okay, so I'm not even trying to point out this, like that is obviously a hat, although that is a great point. But my larger point is right about here. You might think that is a weird looking head. It's a pointed, knobby head of a Sasquatch. Number one, it's not. Let's increase the brightness, and we see that the head actually ends right here. This is a shadow. This is a dark aura around it's an optical illusion because the sun is setting almost directly behind this figure. We get a dark aura exaggerating the actual outline of the figure. Now let's zoom in a little closer here. And to show you that this person is actually a person and wearing a hat or some sort of headgear, all we have to do is do this next frame. That is not a pixel glitch. That follows through multiple frames. This is not the head of a Sasquatch. If you're watching this without enhancing this, you just get this dark coned head, and you think, oh my gosh, it's got a huge coned head. Nope. Let's brighten these clips up, and you see that this is the actual outline of the figure, and this is a shadow, an optical illusion from the sun setting behind this figure. If you don't think that's a hat, that's fine, but we're going to have a beef if you think that this is a Sasquatch head, because it's not. The thing about the shadow dark aura around this thing is it almost acts like a magnifying glass, because we get to see a magnified version, at least the outline of the entity, the figure, and we see, boom, look at that. There is some sort of hat thing poking off. There it is. And the reason I'm showing this is because this is early on, but then if we go to the very end, this is a very important frame right before it disappears at the end of the video behind the rock. It's very clear that something is sticking up here. This is not a pixel glitch. So you see that it's like something sticking up, almost like it's got some tassels or something. But what's great about this is you also get to see right here that this is the end of the head, and that this is the dark shadow above, and you can actually see in both instances here, this part right here, you can see that this is the actual outline of the figure. There's this, and it goes up. This is the dark shadow around, and then, but this is actually a kind of a magnified shadow aura, I don't even know what you call it, of this, the actual outline of the figure right here. If you were to just look at this without enhancing it, you might think this is the entire head. That's not accurate. There's this little point thing sticking out of the head with little tassels kind of going off, and that is reflected right here by the actual figure. And you see it. I mean, it's just clear as day. It's just right there. And it's those two factors, and there so many times throughout this video. Without that, like, you might think this whole thing, this whole mass is the entirety of the figure, when in reality it's this right here. It's not all of that. That is just an optical illusion, and that contributes to the appearance that it has a coned head, along with the hat that it's wearing. There's so much more. I mean, there's so much more to show that this is not a Sasquatch. This is more evidence of the hat this thing is wearing, the headgear. Like, it's literally just like some weird pokey thing. It's some weird floppy hat. I don't really know, but it is not a Bigfoot. Proportions are human. I've watched this so many times. This is 100%. It's 100% a human. This should cease to be a Class A Bigfoot sighting on the BFRO. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This was a really difficult video to research for many reasons, and I'm thankful for your patience. Also, again, Christian Owens, thank you for your support. I can't wait to see you guys next time. Take care and be safe out there.